When Lena McCrae rode through the gates of Rourke Ranch that October morning, she carried a secret that could destroy everything. Her husband, Daniel, had been murdered 8 months ago, pushed off a cliff by someone on this very ranch. The law called it an accident. She knew it was a lie. Now she was walking straight into the killer's territory, with her 2-year-old son strapped to her back and nothing but a dead man's letter to guide her. The letter said 3 words: "Do not trust Wade, Wade Rourke." The charming younger brother of the cattle baron who owned this empire of dust and cattle. The man with the easy smile and the cold eyes. The man who had killed her Daniel and slept soundly in his bed every night since. But Lena did not come here to hide. She came here to find proof, and she came here to make him pay. What she did not expect was the widowed cattle baron himself, the silent 6-year-old girl who had not spoken a word in 4 years, or the dangerous truth that would force her to choose between justice and something she never thought she would feel again: love. This is a story about a woman who had nothing left to lose, and how losing everything gave her the courage to fight for something worth keeping. This story will teach you. The West was never about being strong. It was about holding on when you have nothing left. It was about finding people worth holding on to. And sometimes the justice you seek becomes the doorway to the life you were always meant to live. This is more than a love story. It is a story about grief and how we survive it, about guilt and how we carry it, about family, not the one we are born into, but the one we choose when the world burns down around us. Lena came to this ranch looking for a killer. She found a home instead. And that is the message I want you to take with you today. Sometimes the darkest roads lead to the brightest destinations. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you becomes the reason you find everything you were missing. If stories like this speak to your heart, if you believe that love can rise from ashes and justice can walk hand in hand with forgiveness, then I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me where you are listening from today. I want to see how far this story can travel, from Texas to Tokyo, from California to Cairo. Let me know you are out there. Now let us begin. The wind carried dust and memory across the Texas panhandle that October morning in 1887. Lena McCrae stood before a weathered wooden cross in the small cemetery outside Tascosa, her hand resting on the shoulder of her 2-year-old son Jacob, who squirmed against her hip. The inscription on the marker was simple: Daniel McCrae, 1855 to 1887, fell from horse. She knew it was a lie. They say the West is where people come to run away. But Lena had learned different. The West is where people come to face things, and she had come to face the man who killed her husband. If you have ever lost someone you loved to violence and been told it was an accident, then you know the fire that burned in Lena's chest. If you have ever held your child close and wondered how you would feed him tomorrow, then you understand why she stood here now, 8 months after they put Daniel in the ground, ready to walk into the den of the man she suspected had murdered him. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story can travel from the plains of Texas to wherever you're listening right now. And if stories of justice and love against impossible odds speak to your heart, make sure you subscribe. You will not want to miss how this widow's gamble changes everything. Now let me take you back to that autumn morning when everything began. Lena had spent 8 months working her way closer to Rourke Ranch, taking cook positions at smaller spreads, gathering information, waiting for her chance. The letter Daniel sent before his death had arrived 2 weeks after they buried him. She had read it so many times the paper was soft as cloth. If anything happens to me, find the ledger in the old north cabin. Do not trust Wade. Whatever you do, do not trust Wade. Wade Rourke, the younger brother of the cattle baron who owned the biggest ranch in the panhandle. The charming one, everyone said. The smart one who handled the business side while his older brother Colt worked the land. The one who had killed her Daniel. She was certain of it, even if she could not prove it yet. The horse beneath her was thin and tired, a dun-colored gelding named Dusty, who had belonged to Daniel. He was the only thing of her husband's she had managed to keep, and he knew this land better than she did. 3 times during the ride he had tried to turn toward the barn where he used to live, where Daniel used to brush him down after long days checking fence lines. Jacob stirred against her back, secured in a makeshift carrier of canvas and rope. At 2 years old, he was heavy enough to make her shoulders ache after hours in the saddle, but he was all she had left of Daniel. Those same brown eyes, that same stubborn set to the jaw even in sleep. She would burn the world down to protect him, and she would find the truth about his father's death if it killed her. The gate of Rourke Ranch appeared through the dust, and Lena reined Dusty to a stop. The spread was impressive even by Panhandle standards. A main house of solid timber and stone, a bunkhouse large enough for 20 hands, corrals and barns and outbuildings stretching toward the horizon. This was an empire built on cattle and land, and she suspected blood. A man stood at the gate, working on a broken fence rail. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered skin and hair going gray at the temples. His movements were efficient, almost mechanical, like a man who had done this same repair 1,000 times before. Colt Rourke, the widowed cattle baron himself. He looked up as she approached, and Lena felt those deep-set blue eyes take her measure. He saw everything: the worn saddle, the exhausted horse, the child strapped to her back, the desperate set of her shoulders. She lifted her chin and met his gaze. She would not come to him as a beggar. "I heard you need a cook," she said. "Where did you hear that?" His voice was low and rough, like gravel under boots. "Tascosa. Your last one left owing money at the saloon. Long ride from Tascosa. I have made longer." He set down his hammer and walked toward her horse. His hand ran along Dusty's neck, checking the brand, and Lena's blood went cold. She saw the moment recognition flickered in his eyes. "That animal needs water and rest," he said quietly. "He will get both if you hire me." Colt Rourke was silent for a long moment. Then he reached for the gate latch. "Cook's cabin is behind the main house. Kitchen has been empty for 3 weeks. Men eat at dawn and dusk, and the pay. Room and board, $2 a week. I will decide in 2 weeks if it becomes permanent." He swung the gate open and Lena rode through. She had done it. She was inside. As she passed him, she saw a small figure standing on the porch of the main house. A girl, maybe 6 years old, with blonde hair and hollow eyes that seemed to look right through her. "Your daughter?" Lena asked. "Emma, she does not talk. Do not expect her to." Lena nodded and urged Dusty forward, but before she had gone 10 feet, Colt's voice stopped her cold. "Mrs. McCrae." She froze. He knew her name. He knew her. How did he know her name? "Daniel's saddle is in the barn. I kept it for him. Figured someone might come for it eventually." He turned and walked away before she could respond, leaving Lena sitting frozen in the saddle with her heart pounding against her ribs. He knew. He had always known who she was. The question was, what else did he know? And why had he let her in? Through the window of the main house, the silent girl Emma watched with those empty eyes, and Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn wind. The cook's cabin was exactly what she expected. A disaster of grease-caked surfaces and mouse droppings, with a smell of burnt coffee and abandonment hanging in the air. The previous cook had clearly left in a hurry, and housekeeping had not been his strength even before that. Lena set Jacob down in a corner where she could see him, gave him a wooden spoon to play with, and got to work. She had cleaned worse. In the year after her mother died, she had scrubbed floors in a Denver boarding house until her knuckles bled. This was nothing. But as she worked, her mind kept returning to Colt Rourke's face when he recognized Daniel's horse. He had not seemed surprised to see her, almost like he had been waiting. Was he an ally or an enemy? Had he known what his brother did to Daniel? Was he protecting Wade, or was he searching for the truth just like she was? She could not afford to trust anyone. Daniel had trusted someone, and it had gotten him killed. By late afternoon, the kitchen was clean enough to cook in. Lena started beans soaking, mixed up cornbread batter, and got the coffee brewing strong enough to strip paint off a barn door. Daniel used to joke about the coffee on this ranch, how it was never strong enough for working men. She would fix that. The cowboys came at dusk, 15 of them, dusty and tired and suspicious. They looked at her with the wariness men always showed a new cook. The last one had been bad enough that half of them had threatened to quit, she had heard. They were expecting more of the same. She served them without a word. Beans with wild onions she had found growing behind the cabin. Cornbread with the last of the good flour. Coffee that would put hair on a man's chest. They ate in skeptical silence. Then, one by one, they came back for seconds. Better than the last one, the foreman said gruffly. His name was Dutch, she had learned. A black man in his 50s with a gray beard and eyes that would not quite meet hers. There was something about the way he avoided her gaze, something that made her wonder what he knew and was not saying. Another cowboy ate slowly, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He had a scar running from temple to jaw, and the lean, watchful look of a man who had spent time in dangerous places. "You have done this before," he said. His name was Garrett Holt, and according to town gossip, he had fought with Daniel in the months before Daniel's death. Over a woman, some said. "I have done a lot of things," Lena replied, and turned away to hide the fear in her eyes. That night, after Jacob was asleep in the small bed she had made him from a drawer and some blankets, Lena sat by the window of her cabin and watched the ranch settle into darkness. Somewhere out there was the truth about Daniel's death. Somewhere in this place, evidence waited to be found. She would find it, no matter what it cost her. Through the window of the main house, she could see a lamp burning in what must be Colt Rourke's study. He was still awake, like her. Still watching. Two people in the darkness, each wondering what the other knew. Lena touched the wedding ring she still wore on her left hand. "I will find out what happened to you, Daniel," she whispered. "I swear it." The wind moaned around the cabin, carrying the scent of dust and cattle and the vast emptiness of the panhandle. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. She had gambled everything on coming here, her life, her son's future, everything she had left. Now she would find out if that gamble would pay off or destroy her. 3 days into her time at Rourke Ranch, Lena had established a routine. Up before dawn to start the breakfast fire. Coffee ready when the first cowboys stumbled in. Biscuits, bacon if there was any, eggs from the small flock of chickens she had discovered behind the main house. Then cleaning, then preparation for the midday meal, then more cleaning, then supper. It was exhausting work, but she welcomed the exhaustion. It gave her less time to think about Daniel. Less time to remember the way he had smiled at her across the breakfast table in their small house in Tascosa. The way he had held Jacob above his head and made the baby laugh. Less time to imagine how he had died. The fall from the bluff, the long drop to the rocks below. Had he known what was happening? Had he been afraid? Jacob followed her everywhere, toddling after her on unsteady legs, babbling in his 2-year-old language that only she could understand. The cowboys had taken to him with a roughness that passed for affection among such men. Dutch had carved him a small wooden horse. One of the younger hands had made him a toy lasso from scraps of rope. But it was the silent girl, Emma, who fascinated Jacob most. She appeared without warning, this strange ghost child. Lena would turn around and find her standing in the doorway of the kitchen, those hollow eyes watching Jacob with an intensity that was almost frightening. She never spoke, never made a sound, just watched. The second week, while Lena was cooking the midday meal, she realized Jacob was no longer in his makeshift playpen. Panic hit her like a fist to the chest. Pure, blinding panic. She tore through the cabin, through the yard, screaming his name. The cowboys looked up from their work. "What is wrong?" Dutch called out. "My son. He was right here. He is gone." And then Garrett Holt appeared from nowhere. That scarred face, unreadable. "The barn," he said. "Check the barn." Lena ran. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. If something had happened to Jacob, if she had lost him too, she would not survive it. Inside the dim barn, shafts of dusty light fell through cracks in the walls. And there, in a pile of hay in the corner, sat Jacob, with Emma. The two children faced each other, Jacob babbling happily, Emma utterly still. They might have been having a conversation, if you could call it that. Jacob talked. Emma listened. And in her silence, there was something that looked almost like peace. When Emma saw Lena, she did not startle. She simply stood and walked past her, out of the barn, without a sound. Lena grabbed Jacob and held him so tight he squirmed in protest. "Do not you ever do that again," she gasped. "Do not you ever." But Jacob just laughed and reached back toward where Emma had disappeared, making grabbing motions with his chubby hands. It was while catching her breath that Lena noticed where she was standing, near the corner where Daniel's old things were stored, his extra saddle, his worn-out work gloves, a saddlebag she recognized. Her hands trembling, she searched the bag. And in an inside pocket she found a torn piece of paper. 300 acres north section, railroad acquisition. Wade signed as Colt. Someone had forged Colt Rourke's signature to sell land to the railroad. And Daniel had known about it. This was what had gotten him killed. That night, Lena saw Garrett Holt lurking near the barn, watching her cabin. The knife at his belt was the same type Daniel had been killed with, according to the gossip in town. When he noticed her watching from her window, he melted into the shadows like smoke. Was he the killer? Or did he know who was? She slept with a knife under her pillow and her son in her arms. The next day, she took the wagon into town for supplies. Most people in Tascosa avoided her. She was a stranger, a widow, an outsider with a child, and no clear history, the kind of woman respectable folk whispered about. But there was one place that served her without stares. Molly Clearwater's restaurant was a small establishment near the edge of town, run by a half-Comanche woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that seemed to look right through people. She was missing 2 fingers on her left hand, and she never explained how. "You are McCrae's widow," Molly said, setting down a cup of coffee. Lena tensed. Word travels fast. Word travels. Truth travels slower. Molly leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Daniel came to my place the night before he died. He was scared. Said someone was following him. Who? He did not say, but he gave me something." She slid a small key across the table, said if anything happened, give it to his wife. Lena took the key with trembling hands. "What does it open?" "A strong box. Daniel said it is in the old cabin on the North Range, the one they do not use anymore." "Why did you not tell me before?" Molly's eyes were hard. "Had to make sure you were who you said. Had to make sure you were not going to get yourself killed before you were ready." That night, back at the ranch, Lena lay awake with the key hidden in her boot. Through the thin walls of her cabin, she heard footsteps outside. Someone trying the door handle, testing. She grabbed the knife from under her pillow and waited, her heart pounding so loud she was sure whoever was out there could hear it. The footsteps retreated. In the morning, she found boot prints outside her window. Too large for Emma, too deliberate for accident. Someone knew she was searching. Someone was watching. She had to find that strongbox before they found her. Later that day, Wade Rourke returned to the ranch. He rode in on a fine black horse, dressed in clothes too clean for ranch work, and Lena understood immediately why people called him the Charming One. Where Colt was all hard edges and silence, Wade was smiles and easy conversation. He greeted the cowboys by name, asked about their families, laughed at their jokes. But when he saw Lena, something flickered across his handsome face. Surprise, quickly hidden behind warmth. "Mrs. McCrae." He took her hand, and his grip lingered too long. "I was devastated to hear about Daniel. He was the finest foreman we ever had, a true loss." "Thank you, Mr. Rourke. He spoke highly of this ranch." "Did he? I hope we can live up to his memory." His smile never reached his eyes, and Lena understood exactly what Daniel had meant in his letter. Do not trust Wade. Whatever you do not trust Wade. That man's smile was a weapon. and his kindness was a trap. Later, alone in the kitchen, her hands shook as she scrubbed pots. She had looked into the eyes of the man who had murdered her husband, and she had smiled at him and thanked him for his condolences. The rage inside her was a living thing, coiling in her chest like a rattlesnake. But she could not let it show. Not yet. Not until she had proof. She would find the strongbox. She would find Daniel's evidence. And then she would make Wade Rourke pay for what he had done. But first, she had to survive. That Sunday, Father Santiago visited the ranch to say Mass for the Catholic hands. He was an elderly Mexican priest who served 3 counties, traveling constantly, knowing everyone's secrets and keeping them all. After the service, he asked to speak with Lena alone. "Mrs. McCrae, your husband came to me before he died, to confess. I cannot speak of confession." The old priest's eyes were kind but sad. "But I can say this, he asked me to pray for courage. And he asked what a man should do when loyalty to his employer conflicts with loyalty to truth." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that truth serves God, and lies serve only men's convenience." He said he understood. Father Santiago crossed himself. 3 days later, he was dead. Lena felt tears burning in her eyes, but she would not let them fall. Not here. Not now. "He was a good man," she said. "He was. And I believe he is with God now, where the truth cannot hurt him anymore." The priest placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Be careful, child. The truth can be a dangerous thing in the wrong hands." "Or the right ones," Lena said. Father Santiago smiled sadly. "Or the right ones. Yes." That night, Lena looked at her sleeping son and made a decision. Tomorrow she would find a way to get to the old north cabin. Tomorrow she would find the strongbox and learn what Daniel had died for. And then, God help her, she would burn it all down. The opportunity came 3 days later. Dutch needed someone to bring food to the cowboys working the far range, and Lena volunteered before anyone else could. It would take her past the old north cabin. If she was quick, she could find the strongbox and be back before anyone noticed she had made a detour. She left Jacob with the cook's helper, a teenage boy named Samuel who seemed trustworthy enough. Emma appeared as if summoned, positioning herself near Jacob with that fierce, protective stillness she had taken to showing whenever the toddler was around. "I will be back before dark," Lena told Samuel. "Keep an eye on both of them." "Yes, ma'am." The ride across the ranch took most of the morning. The north section was beautiful in a harsh way. All rolling grassland and scrub brush with a line of bluffs in the distance that made Lena's stomach clench. Those bluffs. That was where Daniel had died. She found the cowboys eating cold biscuits from yesterday and grateful for hot food. While they ate, she casually asked about the old cabin. That place. One of the older hands shook his head. "Nobody goes there anymore. Roof is half caved in. Old man Rourke used it back in the day before the main house was built. Now it is just storage for things nobody wants to throw away. Perfect." She left the cowboys and rode toward the cabin, her heart pounding. The structure was exactly as described. Half collapsed, weathered to gray, listing to one side like a drunk trying to stand up straight. But the door still opened, and inside, despite the mess of old equipment and broken furniture, she could see the floorboards. Molly had said under a loose floorboard. Lena searched systematically, testing each board with her boot until she found one that moved. Underneath, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small metal strongbox. The key from Molly fit perfectly. Inside, she found Daniel's ledger. Page after page of careful handwriting, documenting everything. Wade Rourke had been selling ranch land to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad for months, using forged signatures. 300 acres of prime grazing land, the winter pasture that the ranch depended on, sold for a fraction of its value, with the money going into Wade's pocket. There was more. A copy of the forged contract with Colt's signature, obviously fake to anyone who knew his handwriting, and an unfinished letter in Daniel's hand. "Mr. Rourke, your brother has betrayed you. I have proof. Meet me tonight at..." The letter stopped there. Daniel had died that night before he could finish. Lena sat back on her heels, the evidence clutched in her trembling hands. This was it. This was why Daniel had been killed. He had discovered Wade's treachery and planned to expose it. Wade had pushed him off that bluff to keep him silent, and now she had the proof. She wrapped everything carefully and tucked it into her saddlebag. She had to get back to the ranch. She had to find Colt Rourke and show him what his brother had done. But as she mounted Dusty and turned toward home, a figure on horseback blocked her path. Garrett Holt. His hand rested on the knife at his belt, and Lena's blood went cold. This was it. Wade had sent his killer to finish what he started with Daniel. "You found it," Garrett said. "Found what?" She kept her voice steady, even as her hand moved toward the small pistol she had hidden in her coat. "Whatever Daniel hid, I have been watching you search for it." Lena's fingers closed around the pistol grip. "You have been watching me so you could report to Wade." Garrett laughed, and there was bitterness in the sound. "Wade? I would kill that man with my bare hands if I could prove he murdered Daniel." The world seemed to shift beneath Lena's feet. "What?" "Daniel was like my brother. We fought, yes. Over a woman, the town says. But it was not that. I wanted him to run, to take you and the boy and get away from here before Wade figured out what he knew. He refused, said he owed Colt the truth." Lena stared at him, trying to process this. "You were trying to protect him. I failed." Garrett's scarred face was hard with grief. He would not listen. Too loyal, too honest, and it got him killed. "Then help me now. I have been trying. But Wade has eyes everywhere. If he thinks we are working together..." A gunshot cracked through the air. Garrett's horse screamed and reared, nearly throwing him. "Go!" Garrett shouted. "Now! Do not trust anyone but Colt. He is the only one Wade cannot buy." Lena did not wait to be told twice. She kicked Dusty into a gallop and rode hard for the ranch, the gunshots continuing behind her. She did not look back. She could not afford to. Please let him be alive, she prayed. Please let someone survive this. She reached the ranch at dusk, her horse lathered and heaving. The ledger and evidence were still safe in her saddlebag. She hid them in the one place no one would think to look, sewn into the mattress of Jacob's bed. That night, she learned that Garrett had stumbled back to the ranch, wounded, shot in the shoulder. He claimed homesteaders had ambushed him. Wade was all concern and outrage. "This is exactly what I warned about. These sodbusters are getting bold." But Colt looked at Garrett with suspicious eyes. "Where exactly were you when this happened?" "North Range, checking fence line." Something passed between the two men, a shared knowledge that Lena could not quite read. 3 days later, the attack came for her. The men were out chasing fence cutters, or what they thought were fence cutters. Later, Lena would realize that Wade had sent them on a wild goose chase, to get them away from the ranch, away from her. She was in the kitchen, Jacob playing on the floor nearby, when the door burst open. 2 strangers, hard-faced men with guns drawn. "Where is it?" the first one demanded. "Where is what?" The second one grabbed Jacob, and Lena's world went red. "The ledger. We know you have it." What followed was brutal and desperate. Lena fought with everything she had. The kitchen knife slashed across one man's face. A pot of boiling water sent him screaming to his knees. But the other one still had Jacob, her baby, her whole world held in the hands of a killer. And then Emma appeared. The silent child had been hiding in the cabin, visiting Jacob, as she had begun to do every day. No one had known she was there, not even Lena. She picked up the rifle that hung by the door. Colt's old rifle, far too heavy for a 6-year-old girl. She did not know how to shoot. She had never fired a gun in her life. But she did the only thing she could. She screamed. Not just any scream. After 4 years of silence, 4 years of not speaking a single word since she watched her mother die, Emma Rourke opened her mouth and screamed her mother's name. "Mama! Mama! Mama!" The sound was raw and primal, and so loud it seemed to shake the walls. It carried across the ranch like thunder, freezing everyone in place, and people came. Dutch burst through the door first, gun drawn. Other cowboys followed, drawn by that terrible scream. The attackers fled through the back window, and Lena collapsed to the floor with Jacob clutched to her chest. Emma was still screaming when Colt arrived minutes later. He took the rifle from her gently, and she collapsed against him, crying, the first tears she had shed in 4 years. "Who were they?" Colt asked Lena, his voice hard as iron. "I do not know. They wanted something they thought I had." Their eyes met. Colt knew she was lying. He also knew why. "Dutch, double the watch. No one comes near this cabin without my say-so." Then quietly to Lena, "Tonight, after everyone's asleep, we need to talk." Wade arrived later, full of concern and outrage. "This is unacceptable, attacking a woman and child. These homesteaders have gone too far." But Colt's eyes were cold. "Homesteaders do not usually ask for ledgers." "What?" "Lena says they asked for something. A ledger." Wade's mask slipped for just a second, just long enough for Lena to see the cold fury underneath. She must be confused. Trauma can do that. He turned to Lena with that charming smile. "Are you certain that is what they said?" "I am certain." The smile never wavered, but his eyes were promising death. That night, Emma sat with her father on the porch. Lena watched from her window as the silent girl began to speak for the first time in 4 years. "I called for Mama when she was sick. I called and called. Nobody came." Colt's voice was breaking. "I know, sweetheart. I am so sorry I was not there. Today I called, and you came. I will always come. Always." Emma leaned against her father, and Lena saw him wrap his arms around her and hold on like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. "I know," Emma whispered. "I know." After midnight, when the ranch was quiet, Lena retrieved the ledger from its hiding place and went to find Colt Rourke. He was waiting in his study, a lamp turned low, whiskey untouched on the desk beside him. "Tell me everything," he said. Lena took a deep breath, and then she told him the truth. "Daniel was my husband. I know. I came here to find out who killed him. I know that too. And I think your brother, I know." The word hung in the air between them. Lena stared at him. "You know? Then why?" "Because I needed to be sure, and because I was hoping I was wrong." He looked at her with exhausted, grief-stricken eyes, and Lena saw a man who had been carrying a terrible weight for a very long time. "Show me what Daniel found," Colt said quietly. "Show me what my brother has done." She handed him the ledger, the contract, the unfinished letter. And she watched his face as he read, watched hope die and certainty take its place. Neither of them saw Wade's face in the window. Watching, listening. He slipped away into the darkness, and his expression was terrifyingly calm. The reckoning was coming. The morning after Colt read Daniel's evidence, Wade acted completely normal. He came to breakfast with a smile on his face, complimented Lena's biscuits, joked with the cowboys about the cold weather coming. He asked Colt about ranch business and made plans for the cattle sale next month. It was the most terrifying thing Lena had ever seen. She knew he knew. He had been at that window, listening to everything. And yet here he was, acting like nothing had changed, like his world was not about to come crashing down around him. This was a man who could kill without a flicker of conscience. A man who had murdered Daniel and gone home to sleep soundly in his bed. A man who would do whatever it took to protect himself. She was in more danger now than she had ever been. "You know, Mrs. McCrae," Wade said quietly, catching her alone in the kitchen while no one was watching. "This ranch has a history of accidents. Daniel, of course, but others too. People who made trouble. Is that a threat? Just history?" He smiled that charming smile. "I do hope your stay continues to be uneventful." He walked away whistling, and Lena gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles went white. That afternoon, she found Dutch at Daniel's grave. The old foreman was kneeling there, hat in hands, tears streaming down his weathered face. I owed him better, Dutch said without turning around. You knew. He was silent for a long moment, then still not looking at her. I saw. That night, Wade pushed him off the bluff. I was checking the north line, heard arguing, got there just in time to see Lena's legs nearly gave out beneath her. Why did you not? Because Wade saw me too. Dutch finally looked at her, and his eyes were destroyed. He told me if I said anything, he would send men to Louisiana. My wife, my son, they are still there. He described my house, my street, my boy's name, Dutch. I am a coward, Mrs. McCrae. I let a good man die and said nothing because I was afraid. Lena thought about Jacob, about what she would do to protect him, about the lengths any parent would go to keep their child safe. You are not a coward, she said quietly. You protected your family. That is what cowards tell themselves. That evening, Dutch received a letter. Lena was in the yard when the rider came, and she watched Dutch's face as he read. Watched it go pale, then empty, then something that looked almost like peace. My wife, he told her later, his voice barely above a whisper. She passed. Fever took her last month. The letter was delayed. I am so sorry. My son writes that she said something before she died. Dutch folded the letter carefully, like it was something precious. Said she knew I was carrying something that was eating me alive. Said she wanted me to be free. What are you saying? I am saying I will testify. Tell the law what I saw. Let them hang me for cowardice if they want. At least I will die honest. When Lena told Colt about Dutch's willingness to testify, she saw hope flicker in his eyes for the first time. We have the ledger, he said. We have a witness. We have Daniel's letter. We can take this to the Rangers in Amarillo, and if Wade finds out before we are ready, then we handle it, together. But they had waited too long. That night, Garrett stumbled into the main house, beaten so badly he could barely stand. His face was a mess of blood and bruises, one eye swollen shut. Wade, he gasped, knows everything. He collapsed before he could finish, and from outside they heard hoofbeats, lots of them. Wade's voice rang out across the yard. Colt, come out and let us talk like brothers, or stay in there and let us talk like enemies. Your choice. Lena ran to the window. In the lamplight, she could see Wade standing in the yard with 6 men behind him, hired guns by the look of them, professional killers. This does not have to be complicated, Colt, Wade called out. Send out the woman and the papers, and we can forget all of this. That is not going to happen, Colt answered. Then people are going to die, starting with her, ending with you. Inside the house, Dutch checked his rifle. We are outgunned, 6 professionals against 4 of us, and some ranch hands who have never fired at a man. 5. Garrett pushed himself up from where he had fallen, blood dripping from his chin. I can still shoot. Lena looked at the men around her. Colt, his jaw set with determination. Dutch, finding his courage at last. Garrett, refusing to let Daniel's death be in vain. And the few loyal cowboys who had not fled when they saw the hired guns. This was it. This was where everything ended, one way or another. Wade walked closer to the house, arms spread wide to show he was unarmed. Can I tell you something, Colt? Something I have wanted to say for 20 years? Save it. Father's last words to me. You remember them. Listen to your brother. That was it. His final breath. And he used it to remind me I was less than you. That is not what he meant. Mother loved you more. Father trusted you more. The ranch was always going to be yours. I was just furniture. Part of the inheritance, like the cattle. Colt's voice was hard. I never treated you that way. You treated me exactly that way. Every decision was yours. Every plan was yours. I handled the money, the business, the parts you thought were beneath you. And you never once said thank you, Wade, or good job, Wade. You just expected it. Like I was hired help, so you stole from me, killed for me. That makes it right. It makes it mine. Wade's voice rose to a shout. For once in my life, something is mine. A shot rang out. One of Wade's men had gotten impatient. And then everything was chaos. Gunfire everywhere. Smoke and noise and the screams of wounded men. Lena grabbed Jacob and Emma and shoved them toward the root cellar. Stay here, she told Emma. Do not come out until I come get you. Understand? Emma nodded, clutching Jacob close. I need you to be brave. I am brave, Emma said, and her voice did not shake. Lena ran back into the fight. The battle was brutal and ugly, nothing like the gunfights in dime novels. Men shot from cover, half blind with smoke, terrified. Dutch took a bullet to the leg. Garrett went down defending the back door, but he took 2 of the hired guns with him. One of Wade's men broke through a window and Lena was there to meet him. The kitchen knife was in her hand before she even thought about it. Close, ugly, personal. The man fell, and she did not let herself think about what she had done. And then she saw Wade slipping around the back of the house, toward the root cellar, toward the children. She followed without hesitation. He was standing at the cellar door when she caught up to him, lit matches in his hand. Come out, Mrs. McCrae, or I drop these, and your son burns with my brother's daughter. Lena stepped out of the shadows, her hands empty. She had dropped the knife somewhere in the chaos. You would kill Emma. She is Colt's. Wade's voice was calm, reasonable, like they were discussing the weather. Everything Colt loves needs to be gone. You are insane. I am thorough. There is a difference. He did not know that Colt was behind him until Colt spoke. Wade. Wade spun around, and the brothers faced each other. Colt's gun was drawn but not aimed. You will not shoot me, Wade said. I do not want to. Then let me finish this. Let me take what I am owed and I will disappear. You will never see me again. I cannot do that. Cannot. Or will not. Both. Wade lunged for Lena, planning to use her as a shield. Colt moved faster. The shot took Wade in the shoulder. He stumbled backward toward the edge of the bluff behind the house, the same bluff where Daniel had died. You actually shot me, Wade said, almost wonderingly. I am sorry. No, you are not. You are relieved. Wade laughed, and blood flecked his lips. Finally free of your burden. Your troublesome little brother. Wade, step away from the edge, please. Do you know what Daniel said before I pushed him? He said Colt will find out. Like your name was a magic spell. Like Colt knowing would somehow make everything right. Wade spat blood. He died with your name on his lips. Pathetic. The ground beneath Wade's feet began to crumble. Wade, take my hand. Colt lunged forward, reaching. Their fingers brushed, and Wade pulled back, deliberately, a final act of defiance. You do not get to save me, he said. You do not get to feel good about this. He fell backward into the darkness. The sound when he hit the rocks below was terrible. Final. Colt knelt at the edge of the bluff, staring down into the darkness. Lena came to stand beside him. Are you... Do not. Not yet. The hired guns, seeing their employer fall, scattered into the night. The battle was over. Emma emerged from the cellar, Jacob in her arms. She was singing softly to keep him calm. The first song anyone had heard from her in 4 years. Help me bring him up, Colt said. What? My brother. I will not leave him at the bottom of a cliff like an animal. Help me bring him up. They worked by torchlight until dawn, and when Wade's body finally lay on solid ground, Colt sat beside it, alone, until the sun rose over the panhandle. Lena watched from the porch, Jacob sleeping against her shoulder. She thought about justice and vengeance and the price that both of them carried. Daniel was avenged, but no one was celebrating. The days after Wade's death moved slowly, like a river thick with mud. The Texas Rangers arrived from Amarillo 3 days later, summoned by a rider Colt had sent at dawn. Captain Nathaniel Stone was a weathered veteran with cold eyes and a methodical way of asking questions that reminded Lena of a preacher hearing confession. He took statements from everyone. From Colt, who told the truth about what his brother had done. From Dutch, who finally unburdened himself of the secret he had carried for 8 months. From Garrett, still recovering from his wounds, who testified about the ambush on the North Range. And from Lena, who told her story from the beginning. The letter from Daniel, her journey to the ranch, the evidence she had found, the attack on her and her son. When she finished, Captain Stone was quiet for a long moment. "You came here to find justice for your husband," he said. "Yes, and you found it." Lena thought about Wade falling into the darkness, about the sound when he hit the rocks, about Colt's face as he sat beside his brother's body until dawn. "I found something," she said. "I am not sure I would call it justice." The captain nodded slowly. The West has a way of making those words mean different things to different people. The verdict was clear. Wade Rourke was guilty of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The case would be documented for the state of Texas records, though there would be no trial. The defendant was dead. The hired guns who survived and were captured would face the district court in Amarillo. 2 of them would likely hang. The others would serve years in the state penitentiary at Huntsville. Dutch was granted immunity for his testimony. Captain Stone argued that his cooperation had been essential, and his silence had been coerced under threat to his family. "You came forward when you could have stayed silent," the captain told Dutch. "That is not cowardice, that is conscience, however late it arrived." Dutch just nodded, his eyes bright with tears he would not let fall. After the Rangers left, Lena went to Daniel's grave. She stood there for a long time, the autumn wind pulling at her hair, her wedding ring heavy on her finger. The ring Daniel had slipped on her hand on their wedding day, when they had both been so young and full of hope. "It is done," she said quietly. "Everyone knows now. You died telling the truth, and the truth won." She looked down at the ring. 3 years she had worn it, through Daniel's death, through the desperate months that followed, through her journey to this ranch, and everything that had happened here. "I will always love you, Daniel, but I need to let you rest now, and I need to let myself live." She slipped the ring off her finger and placed it on the headstone. "Goodbye, my love." The wind seemed to whisper in response, and Lena closed her eyes and let the tears finally fall. That night she found Colt sitting alone on the porch, staring at nothing. "I keep thinking about what he said," Colt told her without looking up. "That I never said thank you. Never said good job. He killed my husband. I do not care about his hurt feelings, I know. But I care about the truth of it." Colt's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "I did take him for granted. I did treat him like he would always be there. Always handle the parts I did not want to handle. That does not excuse what he did. No, it does not. But it explains something about how a person becomes capable of that." Lena sat down beside him on the porch steps. The night was cold and stars spread across the sky like scattered diamonds. "You are not responsible for what he became," she said. "Maybe not entirely, but I am not innocent either." Colt finally looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. "How do you live with that? Knowing you could have done something different." Lena thought about all the choices she had made, the things she had done and not done, the prices she had paid and the prices others had paid for her. "You do what Daniel did," she said at last. "You tell the truth even when it costs you. You protect what matters even when you are scared. And you do not let the guilt make you useless." She took his hand, and he did not pull away. "You keep living. That is the only answer I have found." They sat in silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel overhead. "The ranch needs work," Colt said after a while. "Half the hands left after the shooting. The north section is still a mess. The railroad is going to fight us for that land Wade sold them. I know. It could take years to sort out. Could bankrupt us, I know. Colt turned to look at her. Why are you still here? Lena met his eyes. Because I have nowhere else to go. Because Jacob loves Emma, and Emma loves Jacob because she took a breath. Because I am not ready to leave, not yet. Something shifted in Colt's face. Something like hope, fragile and uncertain. I am glad, he said quietly. I am glad you are staying. They did not say anything else. They did not need to. They just sat together on the porch steps while the night grew cold around them. Two people who had survived something terrible and were learning slowly how to live again. The next few weeks were consumed with the practical work of putting the ranch back together. Dutch stepped fully into the foreman role. His guilt transformed into fierce dedication. He worked harder than any man half his age, determined to prove that his second chance meant something. Garrett healed slowly from his wounds. When he could finally ride again, he came to Lena with his hat in his hands. I cannot stay, he said. Too many ghosts here. Every time I see that bluff, I see Daniel falling. Where will you go? West. California, maybe. They say there is work there for men who do not ask questions. Lena took his hand. Thank you for trying to protect me, for honoring Daniel. I failed him. Garrett's voice was rough. The least I could do was not fail you. He rode out at dawn the next day. They never saw him again. Emma continued to heal in her own way. She talked now more each day, though she was still a quiet child by nature. She had appointed herself Jacob's guardian and teacher, showing him how to feed the chickens, how to pet the horses, how to catch fireflies in a jar. Jacob called her Emmy and followed her everywhere, and sometimes Lena would catch Emma smiling, a real smile, and feel hope swelling in her chest. One evening, Emma approached Lena with a question. Is Jacob going to be my brother now? Lena knelt down to look her in the eye. What makes you ask that? Because brothers and sisters stay together, and I want Jacob to stay. Lena's heart squeezed. I am not sure what is going to happen, sweetheart, but I promise you, Jacob and I are not going anywhere right now. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. She started to walk away, then turned back. Miss Lena, yes, I am glad you came here. I was alone before. Now I am not. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. I am glad I came too, Emma. That night she told Colt about the conversation. She is healing, Colt said, wonder in his voice. I thought I had lost her forever. I thought she would never speak again, never smile again. And now look at her. Children are resilient, not just children. He looked at Lena with something in his eyes she could not quite name. You came here broken. So did I. But here we are. Here we are. The silence stretched between them, full of things neither of them was ready to say. I should check on Jacob, Lena said, standing up. Lena, she paused at the door. I just wanted you to know. Colt's voice was rough. Whatever happens with the ranch, with the railroad, with any of it, I am glad you came here too. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and slipped out into the night. But as she walked back to her cabin, she found herself smiling. And for the first time since Daniel died, she let herself imagine a future that did not hurt to think about. Winter came hard to the Panhandle that year. The first snow fell in early December, blanketing the ranch in white and driving everyone inside to huddle around fires and wait for spring. The cattle had been moved to the winter pasture, the one that was still entangled in legal battles with the railroad, and every day Colt rode out to check on them with a worried furrow between his brows. The legal fight was going to be long and expensive. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad had deep pockets and deeper patience, and they did not take kindly to being told their contracts were fraudulent. Even with Daniel's evidence and Dutch's testimony, it could be years before the courts made a final ruling. We might lose everything, Colt told Lena one night, his voice flat with exhaustion. The lawyers are bleeding us dry. If this goes on much longer, there will be nothing left to fight for. What are you going to do? Keep fighting. His jaw was set with stubborn determination. That land belonged to my father. It belongs to the ranch. I will not let Wade's betrayal stand, even if it costs me everything. Lena watched him, this man who had lost so much and kept standing. His wife, his brother, his faith in the family that was supposed to protect each other. And yet here he was, still fighting, still refusing to give up. "You are not alone in this," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" Colt looked at her, and something passed between them. Something that had been building for months, since the first night they sat on the porch together, since he took her hand and did not let go. "I know," he said, "and I am grateful." The Christmas celebration was small but warm. Molly came from town with baskets of food and sharp observations about the state of Lena's kitchen. Father Santiago said Mass in the main house, his voice carrying the familiar Latin words that had meant comfort to Lena since childhood. Emma and Jacob tore through their presents with delight. A wooden horse for Jacob, carved by Dutch. A set of hair ribbons for Emma, purchased by Lena on a trip to town. Small things, but the children did not care. They had each other, and that was gift enough. After the children were in bed, Colt and Lena sat by the fire in the main house. The flames crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I have been trying to figure out how to say this," Colt said. "Say what?" "That I want you to stay. Not as a cook, not as an employee, but as—" He struggled for words. "I am not good at this." Neither was Daniel. Lena's voice was soft. "It is not a requirement. I know it is too soon. I know you are still grieving. And I know I am asking a lot after everything my family put you through." "Colt." "What? Stop talking." She kissed him before she could lose her nerve, tentative at first, then deeper as he responded. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Is that clear enough?" Lena asked. "Crystal." They sat together by the fire, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest. The world outside was cold and dark, but in this room there was warmth. "It is not going to be simple," Lena said after a while. "We both have ghosts. We both have guilt, I know. And loving you does not mean I stop loving Daniel. He will always be part of me, I know that too." Colt's voice was rough. "I have a ghost of my own. Elizabeth. I visit her grave every spring when the wildflowers she planted are blooming. That is not going to change. I would not want it to. Then we understand each other." Lena smiled, feeling something loosen in her chest. Something she had been holding tight for so long she had forgotten it was there. "Yes," she said, "we understand each other." The weeks that followed were not easy. Nothing about grief is easy. There were nights when Lena woke from dreams of Daniel, his face confused, asking why she had moved on so quickly. There were days when Colt withdrew into himself, wrestling with guilt over Wade that no one could ease but him. But they faced it together, and slowly, day by day, they began to build something new. Molly noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "People are talking about you too," she told Lena during one of her visits. "Let them talk. They are saying the widow seduced the cattle baron, that you planned this from the beginning. Do you believe that?" Molly smiled, a rare expression on her weathered face. "I believe you came here for justice and found love along the way. That is not seduction. That is survival." She paused. "My grandmother told me that love is not something you find. It is something that finds you when you stop running long enough to let it catch up." Lena thought about that for a long time after Molly left. About running and stopping. About loss and finding. About the strange paths that had brought her to this place, this man, this new life. She had come here to bury her husband's killer. Instead, she had found a home. Spring came slowly, teasing with warm days that gave way to sudden cold snaps. But eventually the snow melted and the grass began to green. The cattle survived the winter, barely. The ranch survived too, though the legal bills continued to pile up. One morning, Lena woke to find Colt gone. His horse was missing from the corral, and Dutch said he had ridden out before dawn without saying where he was going. "He does this sometimes," Dutch told her. "Needs to be alone. He will be back." But Lena had a feeling she knew where he had gone. She found him at the cemetery on the hill, standing between Elizabeth's grave and Wade's. His hat was in his hands and his shoulders were bowed. Lena dismounted and walked to stand beside him. "I keep asking myself what I could have done differently," Colt said without looking at her. "If I had seen what Wade was becoming, if I had stopped protecting him, if I had listened to Daniel that night instead of saying I was too tired. You cannot change the past. I know, but I can carry it." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "I will carry it forever. Both of them. Elizabeth, who I could not save. Wade, who I saved too many times." Lena took his hand. "Then carry me, too. I am not as heavy as you think." He almost smiled. "That is a terrible joke, I know. Daniel would have hated it." Colt laughed, a rough sound that held as much grief as humor. "Let me introduce you to someone." He led her to Elizabeth's grave. The headstone was simple but well-tended, and around it wildflowers were beginning to bloom. "Elizabeth, this is Lena. She came here to find out what happened to her husband, and she ended up finding us instead." He paused. "I think you would have liked her. She is stubborn and brave, and she does not let me feel sorry for myself." Lena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wish I could have known you," she said quietly. "Your daughter is the bravest child I have ever met. I will take good care of her. I promise." The wind rustled through the grass, and Lena could almost imagine it was an answer. "Thank you," Colt said, squeezing her hand, "for understanding. Thank you for letting me in." They stood there together for a long time in the cemetery on the hill, surrounded by the people they had loved and lost. And when they finally walked back to the ranch, they walked together, their hands still intertwined. Summer arrived with a heat that baked the land dry and sent the cattle searching for shade. The legal battle with the railroad dragged on, consuming money and energy and hope. Then, in August, word came that the case was finally going to court. Colt packed a bag and prepared for the long trip to Austin. The trial could take weeks, maybe months. Everything depended on convincing a judge that the contracts Wade had signed were fraudulent. "How long will you be gone?" Emma asked, clinging to her father's leg. "As long as it takes, sweetheart. But I will write to you, and I will come home as soon as I can. Promise, promise." Colt turned to Lena. "Dutch will handle the ranch, but I need you to handle everything else. Everything else. Emma, Jacob, the household." He hesitated. "My family." Lena's heart swelled. "Your family. Our family. If you will have us." She kissed him in front of God and everyone, not caring who saw. "I will be here when you get back. You had better be." He rode out at dawn, and Lena watched until he disappeared over the horizon. Then she turned back to the ranch and got to work. The weeks that followed were exhausting. Running a household while managing a ranch during a drought would have been difficult under the best circumstances. Doing it while the man she loved was hundreds of miles away, fighting for everything they had built, was almost unbearable. But she managed. She always managed. Emma had started calling her Mama Lena. It had happened gradually, the way such things do. First it was Miss Lena, then it was sometimes Lena. Then one day Emma stubbed her toe and cried out, "Mama Lena," without thinking. Lena had frozen, her heart pounding. "Is that okay?" she asked carefully. "That you call me that?" Emma considered the question with the solemnity only a child can manage. "I have two mamas now, one in heaven and one here, and that does not make you sad, no, because heaven mama would be sad if I only had one." Lena gathered the girl into her arms and held her tight, crying and laughing at the same time. Molly visited regularly, bringing news from town and her particular brand of sharp wisdom. The gossip has shifted, she told Lena one afternoon. People are starting to say you are good for him, that you brought that child back to life. Emma brought herself back. I just gave her a reason to. Molly smiled. You are too modest and too stubborn. No wonder he loves you. Do people say that too? People say a lot of things. Most of it is nonsense. But some of it is true. Dutch found his redemption in work. He was first up every morning and last to bed every night, pushing himself until Lena worried for his health. You do not have to prove anything, she told him. What you did, coming forward, that was enough. It was not enough for Daniel. Nothing would have been enough for Daniel. He was dead before you could help him. But you helped me. You helped Emma and Jacob. You helped this ranch survive. Dutch was quiet for a long moment. My son wrote to me, told him everything, about Daniel, about Wade, about my silence. What did he say? Said he was proud of me for speaking up when it mattered, even if it took too long. Dutch shook his head. Children forgive things they should not have to forgive. Maybe that is the point. Maybe forgiveness is how we survive. The telegram arrived on a September morning. Lena tore it open with trembling hands. Case decided in our favor. Coming home. Colt. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she ran to find Emma. Your father won, she shouted. He won. Emma screamed with joy and grabbed Jacob, spinning him in circles until they both collapsed in a dizzy heap. Colt rode in at sunset 3 days later, dusty and exhausted but smiling. Emma ran to meet him, Jacob toddling behind, and he swept them both up in his arms. We won, he told Lena, his voice hoarse with emotion. The contracts are void. The railroad has to return the land or pay fair market value. The ranch is saved. Lena threw her arms around him, not caring about the dust and sweat, not caring about anything except that he was home. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too, every single day. That night, after the children were in bed and the ranch hands had celebrated with whiskey and song, Colt found Lena in the kitchen. I have a question, he said. I might have an answer. Lena McCrae, will you marry me? He did not have a ring. He did not kneel. He just asked, honest and direct, the way he did everything. On one condition, Lena said. Name it. That we keep Daniel's grave near Elizabeth's, that we visit them both together, that our children, yours and mine and whatever we might have, know about everyone who came before. Done. Then yes. He kissed her, and the world outside faded away. The wedding was small and simple, held at the ranch on a cool October day exactly 1 year after Lena had first ridden through the gate. Father Santiago officiated. Molly stood as witness. Dutch walked Lena down the aisle because there was no one else who could. Emma was flower girl, scattering petals with fierce concentration. Jacob was ring bearer, though he mostly just chewed on the ribbon. Do you, Colt Rourke, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do. And do you, Lena McCrae, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Lena looked at Colt, at his weathered face and kind eyes, at the man who had taken her in when she had nothing, who had helped her find justice for Daniel, who had given her a home and a family and a future. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The cowboys cheered. Emma clapped her hands. Jacob looked confused but happy. And Lena kissed her husband for the first time, feeling something settle into place inside her. Something that had been broken for so long, she had forgotten what hold felt like. This was home. This was family. This was love, hard-won and precious beyond measure. The first year of marriage was not easy. Nothing worth having ever is. There were arguments about money and ranch business. There were nights when grief rose up like a flood. For Daniel, for Elizabeth, for Wade, and all they could do was hold each other and wait for it to pass. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. But there were good times, too. Breakfast together every morning, the four of them crowded around the kitchen table. Emma teaching Jacob to read, sounding out words with fierce determination. Colt's hand finding Lena's in the darkness, just to make sure she was still there. And there was the ranch, slowly recovering. New hands were hired to replace the ones who had left. The north section was fully restored to them after the railroad paid its settlement. The herd grew, the books balanced for the first time in years. "We are going to make it," Colt said one evening, reviewing the accounts. "I was not sure we would, but we are." "You sound surprised." "I am. After everything that happened, I expected to lose it all. The ranch, Emma, my own soul. But instead," he looked at her with wonder in his eyes, "instead, I found you. You found me. I seem to remember being the one who rode through your gate. Details." She laughed, and he pulled her into his arms, and for a long moment they just stood there, holding each other. The seasons turned. Winter gave way to spring, and spring to summer, and summer to fall again. Jacob grew from a toddler into a small boy, losing his baby fat and gaining skinned knees. Emma turned 8, then 9, and announced her intention to run the ranch when she was grown. "Can girls do that?" Jacob asked. "I can do anything I want," Emma told him firmly. "And so can you. That is what Mama Lena says." Lena smiled, hearing herself quoted. She had said that many times, and she meant it every time. Dutch aged gracefully, his beard going fully white, but his spirit remaining strong. He had made peace with his past as much as anyone can. Every Sunday he went to Mass with Father Santiago, and every Sunday he lit a candle for Daniel's soul. Molly remained Molly, sharp-tongued and warm-hearted, visiting the ranch regularly to dispense wisdom and criticism in equal measure. She and Lena had become true friends, the kind of friendship forged in fire that lasts a lifetime. The cemetery on the hill grew no larger, which was a blessing. 4 graves still stood there: Elizabeth, Daniel, Wade, and a small marker Colt had added, for the child who had never been born, the baby Elizabeth had been carrying when she died. Lena visited them all, sometimes alone, sometimes with Colt, sometimes with the children. She told Daniel about the ranch, about Jacob growing up strong and kind, about the life she was building in the place where he had died. She hoped he understood. She believed he would have wanted her to be happy. And she was happy. Not the bright, uncomplicated happiness of youth, but something deeper and more durable. The happiness of someone who has survived loss and found a way to live again. It was in the autumn of 1889, 2 years after Lena had first arrived at the ranch, that she realized she was pregnant. She told Colt in the evening, after the children were in bed, sitting together on the porch where they had sat so many times before. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice strange. "As sure as I can be." Molly confirmed it. Colt was quiet for a long moment. Then his face broke into a smile so bright it transformed him. "A baby," he said. "Our baby. Our baby." He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled together on the porch, while the stars wheeled overhead and the future stretched out before them, full of possibility. The pregnancy was difficult. Lena was sick for months, barely able to keep food down. The doctor from town visited regularly, prescribing rest and patience, neither of which came naturally to her. Emma appointed herself official helper, bringing Lena water and books and endless questions about babies. Jacob was fascinated by the idea of a sibling, pressing his ear to Lena's belly, and claiming he could hear the baby talking. "What is it saying?" Lena asked. "It says it wants to come out and play." "Well, it has to wait a little longer. Babies need time to grow." "How much time?" "About 4 more months." Jacob's face fell. "That is forever. It will go faster than you think." And it did. The months passed, and Lena's belly grew, and the ranch prepared for a new addition. Colt built a cradle from oak, carving roses into the headboard because Elizabeth had loved roses. It was beautiful, and it made Lena cry the first time she saw it. "I want our children to know where they came from," Colt said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "All of it. The good and the bad, the love and the loss." "They will," Lena promised. "We will make sure of it." The baby came on a clear autumn morning, exactly 2 years after Lena and Colt's wedding. The birth was long and hard, but not dangerous, and by evening a baby boy was crying in Lena's arms. "What should we call him?" Colt asked, his voice rough with emotion. Lena looked at the tiny face, at the eyes that would be blue like his father's, at the fingers that grasped at air. "Daniel," she said. "Daniel Rourke. If that is not two, it is perfect." Colt pressed a kiss to her forehead. "It is perfect." Dutch came to visit the next day, moving slowly but with clear eyes. He looked at the baby for a long time without speaking. "Daniel McCrae saved my soul," he said finally. "Gave me a chance to do right, even if I took too long to take it. This little one, he is going to grow up knowing what courage looks like. He is going to know because his mama showed it." Lena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Thank you, Dutch, for everything." "No, ma'am. Thank you." 3 years had passed since Lena first rode through the gates of Rourke Ranch. 3 years since she had stood at Daniel's grave and sworn to find the truth. 3 years since she had met a silent girl and a grieving man, and slowly, painfully, built a new life from the ashes of her old one. Now she stood on the porch of the main house, her hand resting on her rounded belly. 8 months along with their second child. In the yard below, Emma was teaching Jacob to rope a fence post. At 10 years old, she was nearly as tall as Lena, with her mother's blonde hair and her father's stubborn determination. Jacob was 6 now, more memory of his father than presence, but he carried Daniel's name in his heart, and he knew the story of the brave man who had died for the truth. And baby Daniel, 2 years old, toddled after his siblings with the determined persistence of all toddlers, demanding to be included. "They say the West is where you go to start over," Lena murmured to herself. "But that is only half true. The West is where you go to be tested. And if you survive the testing, you get to keep what you have built." Colt came to stand beside her, his arm sliding around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing. How far we have come. Long way from that day you rode through my gate. Long way." She leaned into him. "I was so angry then, so full of grief and rage. I wanted to burn the world down. And now I want to build it up. For them." She nodded toward the children. "For this one," she touched her belly. "For us." Colt pressed a kiss to her temple. "You did burn some things down. Wade's schemes, the lies that got Daniel killed. That took courage. It took desperation. Courage came later. That is how it usually works." The ranch had prospered in the years since Wade's death. The legal battles were finally over. The land was secure. New hands had come to replace the old, and the Rourke brand was respected throughout the Panhandle. But the scars remained. Colt still woke sometimes from nightmares about his brother, about the night Wade fell from the bluff, choosing death over salvation, about the childhood they had shared before everything went wrong. "I dreamed about him again," he told Lena one night. "We were boys, playing in the creek. Before everything." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "I loved him, even at the end, even knowing what he had done. I loved him. I know. Does that make me weak?" Lena pulled him closer. "It makes you human. It makes you the man I married. And I would not change that for anything." The cemetery on the hill held its peace. 4 graves and space for more someday when their time came. Every Sunday, Lena walked up the hill to talk to Daniel, to tell him about the children, about the ranch, about the life that had grown from his death. Sometimes Emma came with her, sometimes Colt, Sometimes she went alone. "I hope you understand," she said one quiet afternoon. "I hope you know that loving Colt does not mean I stopped loving you. You will always be Jacob's father. You will always be the man who died for the truth." The wind stirred the grass around the headstone, and Lena smiled. "I think you would like him," she continued. "Colt, I mean. He is honest and hard-working, and he loves your son like his own. He built a good life for us, for all of us." She touched the wedding ring that still rested on the headstone, tarnished now with weather, but still there. "Thank you for loving me," she whispered. "Thank you for Jacob. Thank you for everything." Then she stood and walked back down the hill toward the ranch, toward her family, toward the future. Evening light painted the panhandle gold and crimson as Lena stood at the porch rail, baby Sarah asleep in her arms. She had been born 3 weeks ago, a healthy girl with her mother's auburn hair and her father's blue eyes. The household had expanded to accommodate her, and now the main house rang with the sounds of children, laughter, arguments, life. Jacob was 6 and already helping with the ranch, following Dutch around like a shadow. Emma was 10 and reading everything she could get her hands on, determined to be the smartest rancher in Texas. Daniel was 2 and into everything, keeping Lena on her toes from dawn to dusk. And now Sarah, the newest addition to the Rourke family. Colt came to stand behind Lena, wrapping his arms around both of them. "She is beautiful," he said quietly. "She is. She has your stubbornness already. Refused to sleep until I sang to her." Lena laughed. "What did you sing?" "The only song I know. About the cowboy who fell in love with the cook. There is no such song. There is now. I made it up." She turned in his arms, careful not to wake the baby. "I love you, Colt Rourke. I love you too, Lena Rourke. Every stubborn, brave, beautiful inch of you." In the yard, Emma and Jacob were catching fireflies while Daniel toddled after them, always trying to keep up. Their laughter drifted up to the porch like music. "I came here to find justice for a dead man," Lena said. "You found more than that. I found a home, a family, a reason to stop running." She paused. "Daniel used to say the West was not for the weak. He was wrong. The West is not about strength. It is about holding on when you have nothing left. It is about finding people worth holding on to. Are we worth holding on to?" Lena looked at him. At Emma, his daughter, who had found her voice again. At Jacob, her son, who would grow up knowing he was loved. At Daniel and Sarah, the children they had made together. "You are everything," she said. Colt's arms tightened around her. "I spent so long just surviving. After Elizabeth died, after Wade. I thought that was all there was. Just getting through the days, one after another, until there were no more days left. And now I am living again, because of you." They stood together on the porch, watching their children play in the fading light. The ranch stretched out before them, strong and whole. The cattle grazed peacefully in the pastures. The bunkhouse glowed with lamplight as the hands settled in for the evening. And on the gate at the entrance to the ranch, a new sign hung. "Rourke Family Ranch, established 1858, where the lost find home." "They say the West is unforgiving," Lena murmured. "But they are wrong about that, too. The West forgives everything if you are willing to bleed for it. We bled. We did. And we built something that will outlast us all." Colt kissed her, slow and sweet, and Lena felt her heart overflow with gratitude. For Daniel, who had died for the truth. For Colt, who had helped her find it. For her children, who represented hope for the future. For this ranch, this land, this life. She had come here a widow with nothing but a horse and a child and a desperate need for justice. She was leaving this porch a wife, a mother, a partner, a survivor. The West had tested her, and she had passed. Tomorrow there would be work to do, cattle to tend, children to raise, a ranch to run, the endless, beautiful, exhausting business of living. But tonight there was only this. her husband's arms around her baby sleeping against her chest, her children's laughter rising into the evening air. Home, Lena thought. I am finally home. And she was. The sun set over the panhandle, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. In the cemetery on the hill, 4 graves stood peaceful in the fading light. Elizabeth, Daniel, Wade, and the unnamed child who had never drawn breath. They were not forgotten. They would never be forgotten. Their stories lived on in the people who loved them, in the land that held their bones, in the ranch that bore their name. And in the main house below, a family gathered for dinner. A widow who had found love again. A widower who had learned to hope. Children who would grow up knowing that courage comes in many forms, and that the hardest battles are the ones we fight inside ourselves. This is their story. A story of loss and love, of justice and forgiveness, of the West that breaks people down and builds them back up again. A story of a widowed cattle baron who hired a cook, and the single mother who changed his ranch forever. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.